Today I'm going to talk about the difference between flipping and investing. I think a lot of times people confuse the two, especially when it comes to collectibles in the recent 2 years because there's been such a big boom in it. So literally every guy out there that bought a MetaZoo box for 300 and now they're selling for 800, or someone that bought a TD Roxy, like a display set, and they bought it for 900 and now they're selling for 2,000. And then suddenly these guys thinking that, because they flipped it one time, they're suddenly the Wolf of Wall Street and they know what's going to be stonks. And they're going to start suggesting to other people what's going to be stonks as well too. And I could tie this back to other examples in the recent 2 years when it comes to crypto and NFTs and all these people that had the rug pulled from under them. But remember, right? All these people that went to the moon. What happened to all the friends that you know or people that you've seen suddenly go silent after talking for a really long time about how, everything's going to the moon, I'm becoming rich, you just gotta hold the line? Like, do you see those same people driving around in Lamborghinis right now and living in mansions? No, because they don't know how to invest and they probably most of the time lost all their money. And I'll give you another real life example of someone that had the rug pulled from under them and listen to all these like meme advices pretty much where you're playing around with your livelihood, where someone held onto Dogecoin when they could have sold it, but instead, you know what? He preferred to listen to the memes and hold the line, and he pretty much lost his one chance at becoming rich. And this is the difference between flipping and actually investing, right? When you're flipping, you're trying to cash in on something that's very, very short term. Sometimes it's calculated, but most of the time it pretty much could be something that's completely random that you just happened upon. And what's an example of flipping, right? So in Weiss Schwarz, the Spider-Man card, because the Spider-Man movie came out, for whatever reason, this card went from like $100, $200 to suddenly it went it up to like $1,000. People were grading it, and now, because of the reprints happening, it's the price is going down and it's getting cut down to almost half and people aren't buying it anymore, right? But that's an example of flipping where people were cashing in on the popularity of the Spider-Man movie. So even if the price was completely ridiculous, but people were going crazy over it, and you have all these people trying to pretty much manipulate this market and drive attention to it so that they're able to sell whatever they have for a ridiculously high amount because it's in demand right now because of the movies coming out. And another example of flipping, right? And it's a little bit more calculated if you think about it, where the TD Roxy was at a certain price because of the Japanese card, and it was hyped back then. And now when it came to English, people are like, you know what, maybe I'll speculate on it and buy these sealed cases, and now I'm going to sell these for $1,500 or $2,000. And it's calculated because as long as I keep talking about it, and as long as I keep saying how it went for a certain price in the Japanese set, then I'll be able to sell these for $2,000. And, in this case, it worked. But it's flipping because this is working short term. If you think about it long term, are people really going to continue paying these prices when you think about how it's artificially scarce in a way where people could have bought cases and cases and cases of these, and you have no idea how many people are actually sitting upon sealed cases of these trial decks because these are made to order, right? And then you correlate that to the amount of people that are coming into Weiss Schwarz who are also speculating on it, and how many people are actually holding on to some of these cards and just grading them and waiting for that to come out. So short term, if you're flipping, it's fine, right? But think about it though. If you're planning on holding these things long term, especially sealed products, remember, everyone has the same train of thought pretty much, and they're all thinking, oh man, if I hold on to these things, it's gonna go to the moon. And we have examples of these, right? Whenever reprints come out, you see all these people coming out, with cases and cases of these sealed, as well as we know there's people out there with sets like JoJo, Overlord, the first sets of all these sets like Konosuba, right? Every one of these sets are being held sealed right now. It's just that people are not releasing them into the market. So you have to realize that the scarcity is artificial, along with if you're just flipping it, it's fine, right? But if you're planning to just hold these things long term, you're going to be in a lot of trouble if you can't stomach the losses. So what would be considered investing, right? First, I'll tell you what I don't consider investing. products like MetaZoo, where everyone is pretty much speculating on, any sort of like Weiss Schwarz product where it's pretty much modern booster sets that's been released in the past few years, where everyone is speculating on it, everyone's keeping it sealed, and everyone's grading them, right? As well as these serial number cards that are appearing no matter what kind of TCG you're playing or collecting. When an item is serial numbered and it's made to be limited and marketed to be limited, then is it really rare then? Something like this is artificially created to be rare, whereas something that's more organically rare and you could possibly be able to speculate on it a little bit more to actually have a little bit more value is something like the Black Lotus or the base set Shadowless first edition Charizards, for example, right? The reason why these are more organic because these things were pretty much not kept to be pretty much graded. People weren't like, taking care of these. People are throwing these into decks. Kids were playing with them in the schoolyard. They were tossing them around. They put in their back pocket and things like that, right? These things were not at the same time as what we are living in now, where everyone's opening booster packs. People are wearing gloves when they open it. They make sure everything's dust proof. They're sending it into grading immediately. This wasn't a thing in the past. Remember that. And then we tie this also to graded cards, pretty much modern graded cards right now, right? Are these cards really rare if you think about it? If literally every single person that's opening these packs are pretty much sending them for a grading, and they're pretty much all 9s and 10s, especially if it's Weiss Schwarz. Do they deserve the price that they have? Like, let's say someone's selling this for $25,000, right? When you have cards like Black Lotus or Charizard, for example, and all these like really, really old cards that were not graded on purpose and not kept in the conditions that people were expecting, where these have a chance to be speculated on, because you know what? I could see that they're a little bit more rare in the condition that they are, whereas opposed to something like, these Weiss Schwarz cards where every single card is graded, and then you're going to tell me that they're all going to go for 10,000, 20,000, or like, thousands of dollars when the actual raw card itself is maybe like $100, $200 or a couple $100. You have to remember that a lot of these people that are selling these things are speculating on it, and they're promoting it again, right? They're promoting it and shilling it because they're the ones that are selling them. And I'll give another example of artificial scarcity where in the video game market, we had the Super Mario All-Stars for the Nintendo Switch, where they were saying that they were only selling a limited amount of physical copies for a certain amount of time. And that backfired on them when you have a bunch of people that are trying to flip this short term. Yes, short term, there are some idiots that bought this for like crazy amounts of money on eBay and whatnot. But long term, people begin to realize that, it's not as in demand as it is, people are speculating on. So people are just selling these for pretty much normal price or lower than that because they bought so many of them and they couldn't get rid of it. So this is what I mean by the short-term flipping type of mindset after you see all these examples. Short-term flipping is pretty much when you're trying to, pretty much take advantage of other people, where you have these graded Weiss Schwarz cards where they're trying to drum up interest and constantly talk about it. And, then they jack up the prices, and then if some idiot buys it, then they win, right? So if they're able to sell these cards for 10,000, 20,000, 15,000, or however much it is, this should not be confused with investing, because if you're just profiting short term, you're pretty much bamboozling people pretty much that are willing to pay these prices because they bought into the hype, they bought into the shilling, they bought into all these not for sale, not for trade posts, right? Where people are showing them off. They're not selling them, they're just showing them off, and it's really rare and really valued. But it's not considered investing, and it shouldn't be confused with investing, because on the short term, you profited, but once people start realizing that there's a bajillion of these graded cards out there, as you can kind of see like with Weiss Schwarz over time, people are starting to pay attention to, hey, you know what? Everyone's grading their cards. Maybe these cards aren't worth what, we think it is. And then I'll go back to the idea in one of my previous videos where I said it's pretty much like a pyramid scheme, where as long as you're able to pawn it off to someone else, then whoever's on top will profit from it, right? But if you are someone that bought, let's just say, like one of these Weiss Schwarz cards for like, let me see if I could pull up one. for like, $8,000, $5,000, right? If you're the one that bought these for thousands of dollars, then where does that leave you when there's no one else willing to pay for it? If you're just personally collecting it and, that's all you're looking for, perfect, right? But if you're looking to invest in these and sell these, you have to be very, very, very careful. Pretty much any time you should be careful is when anything is pretty much artificially said to be limited, when it's like serial number cards, like it's 1 out of 10. And, there's only this many amount out there, right? So that's when there's an official, pretty much limited supply where it's artificially created to be limited. And if you were someone that bought these for like $200, $300 and you sold them for a couple $1,000s, right? You profited and there was not really that big of a risk for you. But for the person that bought these for $5,000, $8,000, $10,000, $20,000, then you're the one that's stuck with the risk when the person that pretty much sold it to you had zero risk at all, because at most they'll lose a couple $100s, right? But for you, in order for you to break even or even make any of your money back, you would have to find someone that's willing to pay these prices. So pretty much what is happening with a lot of these transactions with pretty much collecting in, trading cards and collectibles is right now, flippers are selling to other flippers, but the flippers down the line are thinking they're investing, but they're not. What's happening is everyone's circle jerking each other and thinking it stonks, and everyone thinks it's just like a fun time and everyone's benefiting from it. But at the end of the day, whoever's further down the chain, and as these prices get higher and higher because of, pretty much hype and stonks, you're getting ripped off, and the people that benefit off of you are pretty much the wolves that are pretty much taking advantage of you. So at the end of the day, what I really want everyone to think about is, if you think you're investing and you're going to profit off of, investing in card games, especially modern sets, short term, yes, you could probably benefit from it. But if you're thinking about these things long term, remember, you're trying to compare these things like MetaZoo and Weiss Schwarz and all these serial number cards. Again, everyone's collecting this, everyone's speculating on it. So there's like so many of these being held onto, right? And you're trying to compare this with things that in history, like the Charizards, the base set Pokemons, and, alpha and beta edition cards like the Black Lotus. You're trying to compare this and think of these things as equal and the same, but they're not. So think about how many people are sitting on top of these Mushoku Tensei cards, singles. How many people are trying to sit on top of these sealed products, right? Where everyone's thinking everything's going to the moon and jerking each other off, saying that's what it's going to be. And this is all excluding the fact that you have to think about how things in pop culture, animes, like Charizard and Pokemon and Magic the Gathering in general, right? These are all based on nostalgia. So again, you have to remember, how many people are gonna remember Mushoku Tensei, Bunny Girl Mai, Overlord Albedos, right? You have to think about, these things are very, very fickle. And when people forget about these things, what you bought for $20,000, $30,000, perhaps no one's gonna buy it. So before you celebrate your victories where you think, I just flipped one card or something for thousands of dollars when I bought it for a couple $100s, try to level yourself and bring yourself a little bit back down to earth and realize that not everything is stonks, and just because you profited on one flip or a couple of flips, it doesn't mean you're suddenly the Wolf of Wall Street and suddenly you're Warren Buffett and you know how to invest. Because it's very, very dangerous to buy some of these things, especially if you're not financially established and you can't afford to lose the money. Because if you won a few flips, if you get stuck with some duds, it's over. So at the end of the day, what I want to bring to light is that don't confuse flipping with investing. Because when you're flipping and you think you're investing and you're putting all your money into it because you're getting a little bit cocky because you made a little bit of money, you have to realize that you're pretty much gambling with your livelihoods. And I'll remind you again, remember all those friends that you had or acquaintances you had that were to the moon crypto, everyone's gonna get rich. They all thought that they knew how to invest and they all thought that they were the next Warren Buffett. Think really hardly about how many of the friends that you have all went completely silent about things like Bitcoin and crypto and NFTs and all these other things. It's because they went silent. The reason behind it is because they pretty much all probably lost a big portion of their money, but they're too ashamed to talk about it. Like, do you really think that if these people really made a lot of money, first of all, people would share how to make a lot of money? And if everyone was gonna become rich, don't you think that everyone would be driving around in Lamborghinis and living in mansions? And in my previous video, I pretty much touched upon this topic and talk about why you need to diversify and why most people that think they're investing are actually gambling instead. So I just want everyone to remember that at the end of the day, do not confuse a lot of these things with thinking that you're investing just because other people are telling you, this is how it worked with a certain thing. And I kind of talk about this in almost all of my videos where you shouldn't listen to just random advice from some of these people online because they don't care if they give you bad advice and you lose all your money. Everyone likes to listen to success stories and people making tons of money and all this hype and stuff, right? But the things that you really have to pay attention to is the people that lose so you could learn why. And those are the true life lessons that are worth paying attention to. And it's unfortunate that a lot of times videos like this and information like this is very, very hard to come by because everyone's just focusing on all the big wins and big profits. But when it comes to kind of like the darker side of things where people, ruin their lives, lose their homes, ruin their family relationships, have a divorce because, they ruined their financial lives. People don't talk about these things because it's shameful and it's just something that's not as exciting to watch. But I'll keep doing these and I'll keep beating people over the head with this information until, I just keep helping people because at the end of the day, these are things that need to be talked about and there's just way too many people out there that are already struggling but fall for these financial traps. Thank you for watching. I hope this was informative. Again, if you're struggling out there, you can always just, leave something in the comments and just, share your story because there's just way too many people that I know that are just too ashamed to share their story when they sit on top of these piles and piles of sealed products that they don't know what to do with and they just bought them all on credit cards that they can't pay off now. And these are the stories that are worth sharing, especially the people that are addicted to after chasing these cards and just keep buying them and they hide these things from their family because they're ashamed that they lost money. So just remember, you're not alone. There's a lot of people out there that kind of fell into these traps in the recent few years. And just remember, it's never too late to turn things around. As long as you just realize that you have a problem and you're willing to just accept the fact that you got roped into these things, and as long as you just cut it off, then there's a chance for you to just fix things going forward. Thank you again, and I hope you all stay safe out there. Take care.